Welcome to episode 118 of The Route presented by White Whale Marketing. The Route is a glorified sports business coffee chat that has a new guest every episode as they share their experiences and route in sports. As always, I'm Christopher Nascimento, and let's get started. So before we get into today's guest, always a couple things to cover before we begin. Quickly, if you can see here, or if you're watching on YouTube, it says at the Route Sports. So check us out on all social media. That includes LinkedIn. So it's a great way to maybe start growing your network, start connecting maybe some of the guests or even some of the people that are interested in the same type of content that you are or interest. So check us out there. But then we're also on all the traditional ones: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, etc. So check us out there. And building on that as well, if you haven't already and you're listening, take the time to subscribe or follow the podcast. We're on all major podcast platforms: Apple, Google, Amazon, etc. I think there's 9 others. And we're also on YouTube. So if you want to watch us visually, you can watch us on YouTube. We're under the White Whale Marketing YouTube channel, and we have the Route playlist where you can see all the different episodes. And each day on all of our platforms, including YouTube, there's clips from all of our episodes coming out. So it's a great way to kind of get a sneak peek of the episodes, maybe kind of get some tidbits and advice. So check us out there. It's some good content. With that said, we can now get into today's episode. We just have a quick message from BetStamp.
Damn it, I lost another bet. I always do this. Why can't I win at least one?
Need an edge in sports betting?
BetStamp allows you to compare the best available odds among sports books. To get an edge in sports betting, download the BetStamp app and use the code WHALE to get access to all the affiliates and pricing. The only way to get an edge in online sports betting is by having accounts with multiple sports books.
Yes.
BetStamp.
I'd now like to welcome someone who is joining us today from Madrid, a women's football professional with experience for Real Madrid, project manager at Avanza Sports, Katherine Sheppard. Welcome to the route. How's it going?
Hey, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. I'm glad we're able to record today.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm really thankful for you having me on your show. So that's awesome. Thank you.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, and the way I like to start every single episode is the exact same. Take me through your route. So where did it begin, and how did we get to the position you're in today?
So, well, now that I look back, it's a pretty interesting, maybe unconventional route. So I'm from Venezuela. I was born and raised there, and I played soccer or football, as it's said here, for a long time. And then that took me to the U.S. I pursued an athletic scholarship in Texas, Prairie View A&M University. And so I studied while I played NCAA Division One soccer, and I finished my bachelor's, my master's. I started communications degree, and I wanted to study sports management, but unfortunately they didn't have that degree there. So I went for communications, which is also a pretty broad area, and it was an area of interest for me as well. And then after that, when I graduated, um, soccer had to like end, and my objective was to stay in the U.S. because the social, political, and economic situation in Venezuela wasn't the best, and going back wasn't an option. So exploring the different options that I had to stay in the U.S., I found the the path of going through the education sector, and I got my certification to be a first grade bilingual teacher, which I actually never thought I was going to do that, but in that moment, that's the opportunity that arose, and it was a challenge. And I did that for 3 years. I taught first grade. Um, Definitely a big challenge, totally out of my comfort zone, totally out of anything that I knew. I also coached here and there as well. But it was definitely an enriching experience. I learned a lot of things, a lot of skills that are definitely, helping me now and help me after that. Um, And yeah, so after that, I was there for 3 years, and after that, I moved to Madrid in 2018. Um, and I continued. My first job here was to be an English teacher at an English academy. There was a lot of demand for that back then, and that was kind of like, my way to get started. And then I also started working with a company that's called Global College USA, which is a college placement company based in Asturias, up north from Spain. And that's something, a sector that has been developing a lot lately here in Spain and in Europe, of kids that are discovering the option of going to the US, um, to play and study at the same time and get scholarships. And the competitive level here in Spain as far as youth sports is pretty high. So that's a sector that started developing a lot. The company started to grow a lot, and that became my full-time job. Um, so I was the admissions rep for the company, and I helped the families and the students with all of their paperwork, admissions paperwork, visa, and everything, and also just helping them with the whole transition, because it's a big decision to send your kid all the way across the ocean to go there. And I lived it. I did it. So it was a good resource for them. And I did that for a while. I also started to get into the whole soccer scene here in Madrid. I started playing. I started meeting people, and I started getting involved in the sports management side. And that's when I made the decision to get a degree, an MBA in sports management. Um, I felt that was like the next step, to continue moving forward in my career. And I did that. I graduated this summer, and I did the MBA in sports management by the Real Madrid Graduate School. And it was an amazing experience. It was pretty tough doing that and while working full time, but got it done, and has definitely paid off. And then I was also at the same time collaborating with an academy here in Madrid, that offered experiences to players from abroad, and I was developing the women's football program there, the academy, and that was very, very awesome too. Just feeling close to the girls and helping them, being a resource for them. That's one of like my purposes. That fulfills me a lot, just to be close to them, and making them feel like they have a reference nearby, and anything that they need, to have someone that has been there, done that. And then a month ago, I got the job as a project manager at Avanza Sports, and I am the project manager for the uh, Center East Coast of the U.S., and we organize the summer camps for the Real Madrid Foundation. And so that's where I'm at right now. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Still on the learning process, but really, really enjoying it.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Yeah, the way I like to go with the episodes, kind of then go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
You're mentioning how you moved to the States from Venezuela for a soccer scholarship, correct?
Yeah,
So
that's true.
what was that process like? Because I've had a guest previously, Thiago Silva, where he was from Brazil, he was playing there, and then he also kind of did something similar where he then went to the States for a soccer scholarship, but he went from Brazil to Alabama. I remember speaking to him, and he was like, "It's the craziest, difference in
Yeah,
experience." So I was kind of
yeah.
curious about how that was for you.
Well, for me, it was totally like in the beginning, it was a culture shock a little bit. I had been in the US before because I had family there. I had visited before, but it's totally different when you visit for 2 weeks or for a month, and then when you actually move there. And by the time when I moved, I was 18, and at that age, you're really close to your friends, to what your comfort zone, and those changes are kind of hard. So in the beginning, it was totally an adjustment. starting with like the weather. Like I moved in December 16th, 2009, I remember. And in Caracas, like the weather is amazing through the whole year. And then the first thing I encounter once I go out of the airport is like this cold wind. And that's when I was like, oh my God, like it's happening. This is happening. Um, but I slowly started to get used to everything. I had family there, which also helped because a lot of kids like go straight to like their college dorm, and that's when their journey starts. But I was lucky enough to have my family nearby for a few months, and that definitely helped. And I also like the language. Usually is also something that is really difficult for people that move from one place to the other, at least student athletes. Um, but I was lucky enough to already have a really strong language base of English and stuff. But there are still some language barriers. There are some things that I had to learn. Um, but yeah, I usually adapt quickly to these types of things, and that was like my biggest one. But yeah, in the beginning it was hard, but then I slowly started to do
Yeah,
better.
that makes a lot of sense. And the thing you're saying about the wind just kind of made me chuckle because I met friends in university who did an exchange from Australia, and that was one of the things they said when the winter started coming for us here.
Yeah,
One of them was so surprised that the wind could hurt. You never knew that like wind would hurt your fishing. Also, that every time someone says something about the wind makes me think of that. But no, that's
definitely.
very interesting. Building on that, then you're kind of mentioning, after you finished school, you obviously played soccer or football in university. Well, then that's when that decision came to kind of start working in Spain. But do you mind maybe filling in the gap there? How did that come about? Was that something where you had a network, or is it something where, you know, like how did that develop? Because that's obviously then another big move, right?
Yeah. So when I was in Houston, I met a lot of people, like a lot of international students from different places, right? And and then I met a girl that after that we got together, and then yeah, like we had like a long relationship, and then it came to be that we're like, okay, now what do we do now? She graduated, she went to the University of Houston, and then she graduated, and then we were like, okay, now what? um and then it was either staying there or coming to Spain. And for me, the US was like the only thing that I had known for like a lot of years, and Venezuela. Like Venezuela wasn't an option.
Mhm.
But I was also kind of ready to change settings. Also, like my situation there with the whole work visa, because I became a teacher. I got a work visa, but that didn't give me any flexibility to change jobs or anything, right? So after a while, I felt like I was a little bit stuck, and did really want to get into the whole sports business thing, and that didn't allow me any flexibility to do that.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's go to Spain, and then we came here, and that's
Oh,
it. So I moved to Madrid without ever being in Madrid before. So
wow, that's crazy. That's exciting
yeah,
though at the same time. But so once you finally do that move, how does that then come about? Where essentially, it's probably some great advice for some of the people listening, right? We're like, hey, I'm in Madrid. I've never been here before. I'm gonna
yeah.
go into a new industry that I haven't been into. How did that work, right? Was it something where you started reaching out to people? You started attending events? I don't know.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the first thing I started doing was like in my experience, every time I moved places, like football or soccer was like my way of like integrating into my new setting, right? Meeting people and everything. So once you start like at least here in the women's football world, like it's always like a small world, right? So everybody knows everybody. You start learning how everything works. Um, and that's when you start meeting a lot of people. After that, then I also, started researching, okay, what are some what are some opportunities that I can do? What do I want to do? women's football has always been my passion. And see, like, I remember the first game that I went here for. I went to a Atletico de Madrid versus Manchester City with a women's Champions League match,
Mhm.
and I was like, I need to work. I need to work in this. Like, like seeing it live was like, whoa, you know. So just meeting new people, asking around, networking. Also, that's when I also started using LinkedIn a little bit more. And I, and then during the pandemic, I started like really appreciating the value of LinkedIn and networking. And when I get something in my head, like to do something or learn something, like I become a freak about it. And so during the pandemic, I started, getting my LinkedIn all lined up, networking, talking to people, researching. I even started a blog that after I didn't have time to like keep up with it, but I started a blog and doing different things, meeting different people, and that definitely helped. And it's just going after, I after I started like reading and because at the beginning I didn't know how to do this. Like, how do I get a job in women's football? Or how do I get a job in football here? I had no idea. So I kind of like started brainstorming. I drew like a path. Like, it's like, what's like my dream job here? So,
Mhm.
okay, my dream job, like I would ultimately love to be like the head of women's football at a club or at a federation or something like that. I started exploring sponsorship. I started exploring marketing, like different things that were inside my, um, like the areas that I was interested in, and that I
Yeah,
thought that
around.
I had a lot of skills that could, transfer there.
Mhm.
And then I started trying to network with people that had, you know, background or were in those, areas.
Yeah.
And just reading a lot of things. And that's kind of how I started. And then I reached out to this academy here in Madrid, um, and I saw that they didn't have any women's football program or anything. So I did a proposal to them to start it, and we started it. And we in the couple of years that I was there, um, we grew our database like we doubled it. We made teams to go to international tournaments. Now they started like an academy, where every two Sundays the girls go. They train, um, different programs. So it's just kind of like trying to brainstorm and see what your ideal job looks like, different areas of interest, and then just exploring the different opportunities that there might be. And even if the company or the club or whatever doesn't have any job postings there, it's just about to like fill in gaps. Okay, so like what gap might this club or academy have? In this case, this academy didn't have an established women's football program, and I was like, okay, let's make a proposal, and that's how things grow. So like it's just taking the initiative and not being scared of being turned down or no's. I used to be like that, but I've learned to just do it, and if it's a no, then it's a no, or maybe how can you turn that no into a yes, or
Yeah.
So yeah,
No, that's super. There's already there like three different questions I want kind of to go down. So I was just trying to make a
yeah,
note to remember it all. But that's kind of crazy to think of like how much value, right? Where you're just kind of suggesting about LinkedIn, where I was kind of in a similar position where I started school, I was in accounting, and I was like, oh, I don't need to network. Every company needs an accountant. And when I made the switch to sports marketing, I was like, whoops, everyone wants to be in sports marketing. So now I do
yeah,
need to kind of grow a network, right? And kind of similar thing where I developed like this blog website type of thing, and then I used LinkedIn as well. And that was the catalyst of getting me into sports marketing. I think that's
yeah,
the difference between someone who isn't versus someone who isn't, right? Where, I have people applying for a position now, and you're just looking at their what is it? Their experiences on LinkedIn, and you can
yeah,
kind of see like who's trying and forcing their way into the sports world rather than those
yeah.
who are just kind of throwing their name in the hat. So yeah, that's very very impressive.
Yeah.
And I guess before we kind of move on into some of the things you were saying there, I think it would be valuable for maybe the people listening if you could maybe share some tips that you've had, right? Because obviously you're successful in making that transition from, starting that LinkedIn network and, flourishing within it. But what were the things that you were doing? Was it simply just, reaching out to people, and every time you connected with someone, you wrote a personalized message? Was it some specific value that you're adding within that message? Like, what types of things were you doing?
So I think it's really important to first, like what I started doing is with the blog, like during the pandemic, I started trying to create value for people, and I chose women's football as my like um, area of expertise, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what I want to become, a women's football expert and a women's football leader, right? And that's what I'm working towards still. Like it's you never stop learning, you never stop growing. So it's not like a finish line. You just continue to go. But that's what I started doing with my blog. I started interviewing different people, like old teammates. Like one of my old teammates, Oriana Altuve, she plays for Valencia. Another one was also playing here that now plays for Rayo Vallecano. Some other girls that play in Chile, in Colombia, like they made it to be professional football players. And I did interviews asking about different things, exploring different topics so that people on this side of the world also has more knowledge about what it is to be a women's football player on that side of the world,
Mhm.
and different topics that I explored and gave my opinion on, insights. At the end of the day, we're all different. We have different backgrounds, and we can see things from different perspectives that can be valuable to others. So that's kind of what I wanted to do with the blog. And when I started posting those things on LinkedIn, and also reaching out to people just to connect, to read their content and stuff like that, everything complements and kind of goes from there. And I even got to connect with one. With her name's Marisa Schenkler, and she sent me a message because she read the blog, and she had a friend living here in Madrid, which is Ella Massar, and she used to play for Houston Dash. She played for Wolfsburg, like this very like high profile ex player, and she was here in Madrid with her partner, Babette Peter, which played Real Madrid. And I ended up connected with them, and I met them, people that I had no idea that I would ever meet in my life. And I ended up meeting them. I ended up helping them with some stuff here in Madrid. Just being helpful to people, like that's another thing that's really useful. Um, just be a resource to anyone that needs it, and provide any help, knowledge, or insight about anything. That's also what it's about, and yeah, so that's basically how I did it, just
Yeah.
kind of creating content that I thought was valuable for other people.
For sure, and to be honest, that's something where when I first got into sports as well, I was helping a sports startup here in Ottawa, and one of the things they kind of kept pushing to me was, "Hey, like, what value are you providing, or what's the value exchange?" And that kind of then stuck in my mind. Where same with this podcast, right? Where someone comes on, there's not only they're having conversation with me, but they can spend that 1 hour speaking to hundreds of different people at the same time. So that's the value exchange there.
Definitely.
So I definitely
Definitely.
understand that, where even where you're understanding here, where some of the roles that you're kind of maybe looking at, they didn't necessarily have a position, whereas you then said, "Hey, I can do this and add this additional value to you," and then that's how you kind of broke in, right? Where you almost made your own different path and kind of said, "Hey, hear me out." So that's very
Totally.
interesting. But before we kind of get into that a little more specifically, I want to touch on the role you mentioned where you're kind of helping student athletes in Spain.
Mhm, mhm.
I just
Yeah.
thought that was kind of interesting because it's funny how now you're saying some students in Spain are kind of coming to the U.S., whereas I was then reading things where students in the U.S. are going to Europe just because of the how much cheaper it is, and obviously it's because
Yeah,
one has to do with sports, the other one has to do with academics. Well, I was kind
yeah.
of curious how that ends up working, right? Is that something where um, the students going there are looking to move to the States for academics, or is it something now where they see that as a potential, you know, career development opportunity within sport because maybe if they're not at the top echelon, it gives them a way in for the leagues in North America that are a little lower, let's say.
Yeah. So I think it's mostly because it's just really, really hard to study and play competitively. It regardless of the sport, it's just really hard because there's not like the system is so different from the U.S. where everything, and we're talking about college here, and even well high school as well, because at the end of the day, sport is really important. It's central um, to youth. Like sports and education has always been so intertwined, and the system is made for kids to be able to do both and
Mhm.
excel at both. And it's not the case here. Um, the system is like those two things are not intertwined. So academic rigor is really high, but then there's no flexibility for people that want to play a sport, especially competitively, where they have to travel, they have to train every day. They have obviously have less time than a regular student to dedicate to studying or do homework or whatever. And there's no flexibility for that. So a lot of people well, not either, a lot of people end up uh, leaving their disciplines, their sports disciplines, because they can't do both. And now that they have discovered, more and more people discover the option of being able to do both,
Mhm.
um, and also, the possibilities that going to the U.S. opens up for someone from abroad. You're learning and perfecting your English. You have an American degree, which is, you know, very valued all around the world. While you're there, you're being able to do both things. The level of like the competitive level is pretty good. I mean, there's conferences and leagues and teams and colleges for every type of level,
Mhm.
which is also really attractive and makes it more accessible to more people. And then the opportunities that can bring you professionally after you graduate. So for people that like they can maybe come back and play. Like there's a lot of girls that went played their 4 years of soccer and then come back and they still play at a pretty good competitive level. Or you can also have the option of staying there if you find a job or if you find an opportunity, and that's very common. So, and especially here in Spain, because the job market here is not pretty good right now, or it's not easy, at least. So a lot of people are finding more pros and cons to going over there, and
Mm.
it's basically because of that.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess kind of, passing on this position of head of admissions, you're kind of then touching how you wanted to then get that MBA specifically in sports management.
Yeah.
Do you mind maybe touching on that? Because sometimes, I've received messages from people who've then asked, hey, what degree should I go get? And obviously, I'm
Yeah.
not an academic advisor, I just have a podcast here. But
Yeah.
what was that decision process like, and what made you realize, hey, this is something I want to do?
So, first of all, um, I knew from years ago that I wanted to work in sport, right? Because that's like, it's once you dedicate pretty much your whole life to a sport, uh, a lot of the times that becomes your passion, and you want to continue with it after you stop playing or whatever. So, um, since I didn't have the opportunity to study a sports related degree, I did get a master's in physical education, but that was not the path that I wanted to take in that, like after that. Um, I started discovering also by reading a lot, by talking to other people, networking. All of this process made me realize that sports management was the route that I wanted to take, because I was very torn between coaching or management. And I coached for a while and I enjoyed it. But I saw, and after a lot of reflection and everything, you know, it's important to have that self-reflection and say, okay, maybe I like coaching, maybe I'm a good coach, but maybe I'm not um, good enough to like pursue a career there. And maybe these interests and these skills transfer better to other things that I also like. So like choosing that path between coaching and management. That's how I did it. That's how it came about. So I chose management, and I, you know, I knew that being in a new country and trying to get into a new uh, area needed, required some new knowledge. Like I had to, it wasn't enough with what I knew. I didn't have enough information about how everything worked. And that's when I knew that doing this MBA in sports management was really important. So I started researching different programs. Here in Spain, there's a few that I wanted to do it. I didn't want to do it online. I wanted to do it in person, and that was the best option that there was. And it's well worth the investment of time and money and everything, because it's not only the knowledge that you get, it's the networking that you do. Like I knew, like in my classroom there was like easily 5 to 8 different nationalities, people from all backgrounds, different ages, and people you can learn a lot from, and that you can have as a network for the future. And also like the professors, like some of my professors are Real Madrid employees, like they are in the industry. They know how it's working right now. They know how to do these things, and they're giving you that information basically. So that was really, really awesome. And I just learned a lot. I learned a lot. And with that knowledge, I was able to come up with this women's football academy project that I came with, like proposal that I did for this academy. I learned a lot about sponsorship. Like that was one of my favorite areas of the master's that I'm definitely getting into. And just, different things that you can totally apply after. So that was one of the best decisions that I made, even though it was really, really hard and I had to, compromise a lot of other things personally. But, once you get it done, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And even just what you're saying from some of the other guests I've had who've done MBAs specifically in Europe, when they kind of decide, hey, what area I want to work in within sport. Obviously, you're saying maybe football within Spain. I've had others want to work at large world federations of sport. So then they were kind of targeting Switzerland, and then they were saying, just from their discussions, that's what kind of stuck out to me is once they kind of went to these specific areas, that's when they started meeting people, whether it's the people in their class or maybe some of the guest speakers coming in or even the professors. That's where it became super valuable, where a lot of them then just kind of leverage that network going forward. So to me, if I were ever to do a master's, that was kind of be the main reason, or almost the only reason. Obviously, I think there'd be some additional knowledge provided, but the people they kind of get intertwined with would be super interesting and much more specific to your area of interest. So that's very cool.
Definitely.
And kind of building on that as well, is that how your current position came up once you had this master's? Was something that enticed, or was it someone you met through the program, or like how did this new role come about?
Well, I also forgot when I was explaining my route. I also forgot to mention an important one. I'm also a team manager for the under 15 Real Madrid girls, and I got that position through the master's degree, because they were needing someone to fill in that spot because the previous team manager left, and they called girls from the MBA or the programs that were studying in that moment, and I was lucky enough to be selected. And so I'm really happy that I got that one, because I'm really close to the girls there. and I take care of different things like just learning how the club works on the performance side,
Hmm.
um, and how the women's football department is growing. Um, but as a team manager, it's more than just taking care of the player licenses before the games. It's also when we go and travel to tournaments, I get to organize all of the schedules, the buses, the meals, everything. But just being with the girls there is amazing, and just learning from them, watching them play, and I see them, and I'm like, when I was their age, when I was 15, like this level is crazy. Like you can see how much like women's soccer has grown in every aspect, but in that aspect, like you see them and you're like, wow, like these girls can play. And I really enjoy that. So I got that position through the master's degree, for example.
Yeah. Oh, nice. That's very interesting. I got a quick
Yeah.
question as you're mentioning that and kind of the position you're in. So obviously, I'm working in sports marketing with my company, and I'm working with athletes. What does it look like in Spain, especially for, you know, obviously they're U15, so they're a little younger, but they are
Yeah.
still under a huge club, Real Madrid. Are any Do you see like this younger generation of athletes coming up even at a younger age, or kind of being interested in their brand off the field, if that would make sense, just in regards to maybe their social media presence? Is that something you're noticing?
Yeah. Well, not for them, not yet.
Okay.
They're still a little young, and they're in this age where they're thinking about just school, uh, going to training, playing,
Yeah.
and but that then I don't think they're still very aware of how important that's going to be in the next few years. But I do think that for the under 18s and the B team, the academy team, they're a lot more cognizant of that, and they're seeing that there are opportunities that
Mhm.
they can take advantage of if they work on their personal branding and on their image and everything.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't a thing before. It
No.
wasn't, and especially for women athletes. And um, they also see they're exposed to all of the marketing initiatives that the club does for the first team, and social media, TikTok, Instagram, everything, where they see those players, what they do, what they post, and all of those things. Like they're a little older, so they do start
Yeah.
noticing those things. But my girls are still a little young for that, so they still don't. But um, they will soon for sure,
Yeah.
because it's
No, no,
definitely a thing.
it's funny. Like, obviously makes sense, especially for that age. But from what you were saying, even just maybe a couple of years earlier, from some of the maybe athletes and agents that I've kind of interacted with, when they're kind of in that development stage where they should be kind of putting their name out there and kind of leveraging that. So then when they're a little later in their career, then they have opportunities to work off of.
Yeah,
Kind of more tunnel vision. Hey, soccer, soccer, hockey, hockey, football, football.
yeah,
But then once it gets to that position of, oh, hey, like the extra money would be nice, or hey, like I'm at this position, what can I do? They're starting from scratch, right? So then that's where it's that balance. So no, that's
hmm
very interesting. I'm very curious just where this current generation is, where they kind of grew up with the phones, and they've had phones since elementary school or something. I'm curious where they're going to go in regards
yeah.
to.
I just think that there's an education component that is important there, because I think they're just kind of oblivious of how everything works, or the importance of it right now. But if 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 you talk to them about it, I'm sure they will start thinking about it, because I mean they're so smart, and they do want to make it to the first team. Like that's not something that it's a dream. Like for me it was like this utopic dream to be a professional football player, but for them it's actually a reality that can happen if they continue to work hard and all of that. So I think there's an education component that could be important, and that should be embedded into the academy program, as a player, as being a player in, I don't know, not only Real Madrid, Bayern, or Barca, whatever the club is. If you're an academy player, and for under 15s and up, I would start educating them on those things. They do get some guidelines as far as social media presence and you know what they should and should not post, or when things like that is also important. But as far as for personal branding, like going a step further, not yet. But I do think it would be really cool if they do that.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's actually something I'm trying to work on, where I'm speaking to different teams, or whether it's in hockey or even, some for soccer. Hopefully that's something we kind of get into a bit more. But yeah, we'll see
Definitely.
where that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, before we kind of wrap up the podcast, I still have two questions I'd like to ask every guest. Thanks. I think it's a
Yeah.
perfect way to clean it all up. So obviously we went through your whole career so far, right? So it's
Hmm.
been very interesting. But I like to then fast forward into the future. I'm very sad on, hey, I'm gonna live until I'm 103, enjoying myself in a rocking chair and thinking about all the cool things hopefully I'm able to do. If you're in a similar position where you reach that age of 103 and you're looking back on your career, is there one story to date that kind of stands out to you of, wow, like I can't believe I get to do this for a living or for work?
Um, it would definitely be working for Real Madrid, like because I started watching, like seriously watching, um football when with the 2002 World Cup. I was thinking about it yesterday because we have all these World Cups announcements, like squad announcements and stuff, and I was like, what was the very first World Cup that I like paid attention to? That was 2002. Um, and then after that, I started just watching a lot of, like, I became a fan. Like, I had Real Madrid shirts. I had the David Beckham shirt. I had the Zidane shirt with he's my favorite player, and like I just started watching Real Madrid and following them. That became my favorite team, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I come back now, like when I got that job at Real Madrid, and like I went there, just going into Real Madrid City for work. Sometimes I just have to pinch myself, and it's like I really work here, Like I used to watch the games, and I used to have the jerseys, and I used to see it from so far away, and now like I'm here. I would have never thought that. And when I got like the gear and everything, it was crazy. Like I had to take a moment and like I did have a moment. I'll confess that because it's, for me, it's like so valuable. And so just thinking about how you saw that, so like how I saw that from so far, and like life took me here, and just being there, it was crazy. And like, not like 2 or 3 weeks ago, we went to an international tournament, and we
Mhm.
played Barcelona. So like that was like my clásico, so to
Yeah.
speak, my mini clásico. And like I also had a moment before the game started because I was like, this is crazy. Like, things that you live so intensely through a TV screen, but like I'm also living it like myself here with these girls. And some of these girls are the future. They're gonna be in the TV screens in a few years.
Mhm.
So that's definitely something that I would go like if when I'm 103, like I would definitely come back to it and remember that first day I went into Real Madrid City to work. That was that was a day.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess we're in the future, now going back to the past. If you have the opportunity to speak to 18, 16-year-old version of yourself, what's something that you've learned so far? They're like, hey, like I wish this younger version of myself knew this, or maybe even someone listening knew this. A little piece of advice, you're like, hey, remember this.
Oof, that's a tough one. I would I would definitely I would definitely tell her to go to the US to study, and because I didn't want to. I was about to not go.
Oh wow.
Um, because like I'm all my life was in Venezuela. I was playing for a national team. I was doing all these things for soccer, and I don't know, like I kind of didn't want to go, but I did. And so if I went back, I would like look at myself in the face and be like, go, definitely go, because I don't feel like I would have learned as many things that have helped me get to where I'm at if I would not taken that step.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure it's kind of a tough, difficult decision where that's a big jump. So I can definitely understand.
So
No, this has been great. I very much appreciate you coming on the podcast. Unless there's anything else you'd like to share, thank you so much for coming on.
no, thank you. I want to thank you again for choosing me and bringing me here. I really enjoyed it, and I really hope that this episode is helpful for anyone that hears it. And yeah, I'll look forward to another one.
Yeah, no. I say to every guest, they always say, "Oh, I don't know if it's helpful." I got 2 pages of notes, so that's always good. You're helping one person.
Definitely.
That's good.
Awesome.
So yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, that's the end for episode 118, and tune again for next week. Thank you.